Chapter 1. The night the world broke open. The rain tasted like iron. Alina hadn't noticed at first, too focused on running, on the slick cobblestones beneath her boots. On the way her breath tore from her lungs in ragged gasps. She'd been running for 3 blocks now, ever since she'd seen Marcus in that cafe with her, with the woman he'd sworn meant nothing, with the woman wearing Elena's grandmother's ring. She should have stayed home, should have ignored the text from her so-called friend, should have known better than to hope explanations existed for betrayal that clean but surgical. The alley she ducked into smelled of rotting vegetables and something darker, sweeter. She pressed her back against the brick wall, chest heaving, mascara probably streaking her face in black rivers. Perfect. She'd look like a drowned raccoon when she finally... The scream cut through the rain like a blade. Alina froze. It came from deeper in the alley, past the dumpsters, where the narrow passage curved into shadow. A woman's scream, high and terrified, then abruptly silenced. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to turn around, find the main street, flag down a cab, go home to her empty apartment and her half-packed boxers and the life she was supposed to be building somewhere far from Marcus and his lies. But Elena had been the girl people walked past, the girl whose mother died while neighbors pretended not to hear her father's drunken rages, the girl who learned too young that sometimes no one comes. Her hand found her phone. She pulled up emergency services, but didn't dial. Not yet. She edged forward, rain plastering her dark hair to her skull. Her sensible coat. Marcus had always hated this coat, called it frumpy offering, no protection against the November cold. The alley curved. The streetlight didn't reach this far. Elena's eyes adjusted slowly, picking out shapes, overflowing dumpsters, a fire escape hanging like broken ribs, and 2 figures. One was tall, impossibly tall, wearing what looked like a long black coat that moved wrong in the wind. The other was smaller, struggling, her blonde hair a bright flag in the darkness. The tall figure had the woman pressed against the wall, one pale hand wrapped around her throat. The other. Elena's breath stopped. The other hand was at the woman's neck, but not choking her. The tall figure's head was bent, mouth pressed to the woman's throat, and even from 10 feet away, Alina could hear it, the wet, obscene sound of drinking. Her phone slipped. She caught it, but the small clatter of plastic against stone was enough. The tall figure's head snapped up. Alina saw his face, pale as alabaster, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, all sharp lines and stark contrasts, and his eyes, God, his eyes, they weren't human. They caught the distant streetlight and reflected it back red, like an animal's, and they fixed on her with an intensity that turned her blood to ice. Run, he said. His voice was cultured, British accent smoothing the edges of the command. Now Alina didn't run, couldn't. Her legs had forgotten how to work. The blonde woman sagged in his grip. He lowered her, almost gently, to the ground, those inhuman eyes never leaving Elena's face. Then he straightened, and she realized he was even taller than she'd thought. 6'3", maybe 6'4". The black coat, no, not a coat, a cloak, fell around him in elegant folds despite the rain. I told you to run, he said, and this time there was something else in his voice. Concern. No, that was impossible. Is she dead? Elena's voice came out steadier than she'd expected. He glanced down at the woman, then back at Elena. No, unconscious. She woke in an hour with a headache and no memory of this. You were Alina. Couldn't say it, couldn't make the word real. Feeding. Yes. He took a step toward her. Elena's body finally remembered how to move, stumbling backward. Her shoulders hit the opposite wall. You shouldn't have seen this. I'll forget, Alina said quickly. I won't tell anyone. I'll just go. I didn't see anything. I don't even know what I saw. You're lying. Another step. He was close enough now that she could see the details, the rain beating on his pale skin without quite wetting it, the way his black hair fell across his forehead in artful disarray, the blood so red it was almost black, staining his lower lip. Your heartbeat gives you away. It's racing. You're terrified. Of course I'm terrified. The words burst out of her. Yours, say it, vampire. The word hung between them, impossible and true. He smiled, and she saw the fangs, elegant, pearl white, deadly. There, he said softly. That wasn't so difficult. Are you going to kill me? The question seemed to surprise him. His head tilted, considering. I should. Witnesses are problematic, but you have the most extraordinary eyes. He leaned closer, and Alina pressed herself harder against the wall, but there was nowhere to go. Hazel, like autumn leaves in sunlight. I haven't seen sunlight in 300 years. 300 years. Elena's mind spun, trying to process, failing. This couldn't be real. Vampires didn't exist. They were stories, myths, Halloween costumes. They weren't real men with British accents and blood on their mouths and eyes that saw through her skin to the frightened, broken thing underneath. Please, she whispered. I won't tell. I swear, I won't tell. I believe you, he said. Then his hand moved faster than her eyes could track, pressing against her forehead. Sleep now. Forget. This was a dream, nothing more. But even as the darkness rose up to claim her, even as her knees buckled and his other arm caught her with inhuman speed, Elena's last conscious thought was crystal clear. I won't forget. I can't. And somewhere in the space between waking and sleep, she felt him catch her, felt the strange coolness of his body, and heard him murmur something that sounded almost like an apology, then nothing. Chapter 2. The House of Shadows. Elena woke to the smell of old books and beeswax candles. Not her apartment. The thought came first, followed immediately by panic. She sat up too fast, her head spinning, and found herself in a bed that wasn't hers, a massive four-poster with burgundy velvet curtains tied back with gold cord. The mattress beneath her was absurdly soft, the sheets felt like silk, and the room around her belonged in a period drama. Stone walls. Actual stone walls, hung with tapestries depicting medieval hunting scenes, a fireplace large enough to stand in, flames crackling despite the fact that she couldn't remember anyone lighting it, tall windows with leaded glass that showed only darkness outside, and sitting in a chair beside those windows, reading a leather-bound book by candlelight, was the vampire. Elena's breath caught. He looked up, and in the warmer light of the fire, she could see him properly. No blood on his mouth now. His face was refined. Aristocratic high cheekbones, a straight nose, a mouth that might have been sensual if it weren't set in such a stern line. His hair was dark, nearly black, and slightly too long to be fashionable. He wore a white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled to his forearms, and dark trousers, like he'd stepped out of a Regency painting. You're awake, he said, closing the book, earlier than expected. Your resistance to compulsion is unusual. Where am I? Elena's voice came out hoarse. She was still wearing her clothes, the frumpy coat was gone, but her jeans and sweater remained. Small mercies. My home. You're safe here. Safe. She almost laughed. You're a vampire. You were drinking that woman's blood. You tried to make me forget, and failed, apparently. He set the book aside and stood. Elena's body tensed, ready to run, but there was nowhere to go. I apologize for bringing you here, but I couldn't leave you unconscious in that alley. The city isn't safe for unaccompanied women at night. The irony of a vampire saying that. His mouth quirked, almost a smile. Fair point. My name is Adrian Castellini, and you are leaving. Elena swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the dizziness. Right now. I'm leaving right now. I'm afraid that's impossible. She froze. Why? Because the sun hasn't set yet, and the wards on this house prevent anyone from leaving during daylight hours without my explicit permission. He moved to the window, gesturing for her to join him. When she didn't move, he added, I won't harm you. You have my word, the word of a monster. Something flickered across his face too fast to read, but it looked almost like pain. Yes, the word of a monster. Worth very little, I'm sure, but it's all I can offer. Against her better judgment, Elena approached the window. She kept a careful distance between them, but when she looked out, her stomach dropped. They were high up, 3, maybe 4 stories. Below spread a formal garden, all hedges and gravel paths, and beyond that, nothing. Just darkness. No city lights, no street lamps, no cars. Where are we? The Blackwood Estate, approximately 40 miles north of London. London. Elena spun to face him. I was in Manchester. How did I wear in London? I drove. You were unconscious for several hours. He paused. You should eat something. You missed dinner. Dinner. The word was hysterical. You kidnapped me, brought me to where even is this, some kind of vampire castle, manor house, technically, and I didn't kidnap you. I rescued you. From what? From being found by the Corvus house. His expression hardened. The woman I was feeding from, she wasn't a random victim. She was bait, set out deliberately in territory I'm known to hunt. If you'd been found at that scene, they would have assumed you were with me. And the Corvus house doesn't take prisoners. Elena's mind reeled. Corvus house, you're talking about, what? Vampire politics. I'm talking about a war. Adrian moved away from the window, pacing to the fireplace. The flames cast his shadow long across the floor, between houses that have existed since before your country was discovered. The Corvus house wants my territory, my resources, and my death. In that order. Anyone associated with me becomes a target. But I'm not associated with you. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet here you are. He turned to face her, and those red-tinged eyes caught the firelight. Wearing my clothes, under my protection, in my home. To them, that makes you mine. The possessive word sent a strange shiver through her. Then compel me to forget. Do it properly this time. Send me home. I can't. Why not? Because you've already proven resistant to my compulsion, which means you have latent psychic sensitivity rare in humans, but not unheard of. If I forced it, I might damage your mind irreparably. His jaw tightened. And because the Corvus scouts saw you in that alley, they know your face now. Compulsion won't erase their memories. Alina sank down onto the edge of the bed, legs suddenly weak. So what happens to me? You stay here, under my protection, until the situation with Corvus House resolves itself. And how long will that take? His silence was answer enough. Days, she pressed. Weeks, possibly months. I have a life. I have a job, an apartment. I'm supposed to be moving to Edinburgh in 2 weeks, all of which will have to wait. You can't just keep me prisoner. I'm keeping you alive. The words came out sharp, echoing off the stone walls. Then, softer, I didn't ask for this either, but I won't have another death on my conscience. Not if I can prevent it. Another death. Alina caught the slip, filed it away. If you're trying to be noble, kidnapping isn't a great start. No, he agreed quietly, but it's better than the alternative. He walked to the door, heavy oak, bound with iron, and paused with his hand on the latch. There's a bathroom through that door. Clean clothes in the wardrobe. Food will be brought up shortly. Don't try to leave this room. The house has defenses. They won't kill you, but they're unpleasant. Wait, Alina called. He paused. Why did you save me? Really? Adrian looked back at her, and for a moment, his expression was unguarded, lost, lonely. Because you reminded me, he said, of what it means to be human. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Alina was alone in a vampire's house, with no way out, and a future that had narrowed to a single, impossible reality. She was trapped in a manor house, with a creature who drank blood and spoke of wars and houses and deaths on his conscience. And the worst part, the truly terrifying part, was the small, traitorous corner of her mind that whispered, but at least Marcus can't hurt you here. Chapter 3. The Unspoken Rules. The food arrived on a silver tray carried by no one. Alina watched from the bed as the door opened by itself, the tray floating through the air with eerie precision before settling on the small table near the fireplace. Then the door closed again, silent as a confession. Magic. Vampire magic. Or maybe just technology she didn't understand. Either way, her hands shook as she approached the tray. Soup, French onion, by the smell, crusty bread still warm from the oven, a small salad with vinaigrette, and wine in a crystal glass that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Her stomach growled, betraying her. She hadn't eaten since lunch, and that felt like a lifetime ago. Back when her biggest problem was Marcus and his lies, not vampire houses and blood feuds. She ate, hated herself for it, but ate. The soup was perfect. That made it worse somehow afterward. She explored the room because sitting still meant thinking, and thinking meant panic. The wardrobe held clothes in her size, jeans, sweaters, even a dress in deep green velvet that looked like something from a gothic novel. How had he known her size? She didn't want to think about that. The bathroom was marble and brass, with a clawfoot tub deep enough to drown in, and toiletries that smelled of lavender and something darker. Myrrh, maybe. There were no windows, just more candles in sconces that lit themselves when she entered. By the time she returned to the bedroom, exhaustion had caught up with her, but sleep felt dangerous. What if Adrian came back while she was unconscious? What if he decided her blood smelled as good as that woman's in the alley? She settled in the chair by the fire instead, wrapping herself in a throw blanket, and waited. She must have dozed, because when the door opened again, the fire had burned low, and her neck ached from the awkward angle. Adrian stood in the doorway, backlit by candlelight from the hall. He'd changed clothes now, wearing a dark sweater, and the same expression of careful neutrality. You should sleep in the bed, he said. That chair will ruin your spine. I'm fine here. Stubborn. He moved into the room, and Alina tensed, but he only went to the fireplace, adding wood with practiced efficiency. The flames leaped higher, casting his face in warm light. You'll be more comfortable if you accept your situation. Accept being held prisoner. Accept being protected. He straightened, brushing ash from his hands. There's a difference, not from where I'm sitting. He regarded her for a long moment, then, surprising her, he settled on the floor near the hearth, back against the stone, not in the other chair, not looming over her, just sitting, like a normal person might, except his skin was too pale, and he didn't blink often enough, and she could see the way his chest didn't move with breath. Ask, he said quietly. I can feel your questions like insects crawling on my skin. Do you have to breathe? No, but I do anyway. Habit. It makes humans more comfortable. Do you sleep? During the day, the sun doesn't kill me, but it weakens me considerably. Sleep is safer. In a coffin, his mouth quirked. A bed, like a civilized person. The coffin thing is a myth, along with garlic and holy water. What about crosses? Only if you believe in them. Faith can be a weapon, but it requires true conviction. Rare, these days. He tilted his head, studying her. What else? Alina pulled the blanket tighter. Why can't you compel me? I told you. Psychic sensitivity. No, I mean, why does that matter? You're stronger than me, faster. You could just force me to forget. I could. His voice went flat. I could snap your neck before you finished screaming. I could drain you dry in under a minute. I could do many things, but I choose not to, because 300 years ago, I was turned against my will. The words came out, measured, careful, held down, fed upon, changed without consent, and I swore that night that I would never do to another what was done to me. The fire crackled in the silence. I'm sorry, Alina said finally. I'm sorry that happened to you. He looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. Most humans don't apologize to monsters. You haven't hurt me yet. Yet he almost smiled. At least you're realistic. 300 years, Alina said, turning the number over in her mind. You've been alive since, what, the 1700s? 1724. I was 28 when I died. The first time. What was it like? The world back then, smaller, darker, more honest about its cruelty. He gazed into the fire. We didn't pretend civilization made us decent. We knew what we were. And what are you now? Tired? The word slipped out before he could catch it. He straightened, walls going back up. You should rest. Tomorrow, I'll explain the rules. Rules for surviving in a vampire's house. He stood, brushing off his trousers. Don't enter rooms marked with red wax seals. Don't go outside after dark unless I'm with you. Don't invite anyone in, not even if they look human. And never, under any circumstances, open the door to the East Wing. Why? What's in the East Wing? Things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. He moved to the door, then paused. One more rule, the most important one. What? Don't trust me. His eyes found hers, and they were sad, ancient and sad. I may be keeping you alive, Alina, but I'm still a monster. Don't ever forget that. He left before she could respond, the door closing with a soft click and the sound of a lock engaging. Alina sat in the chair, heart pounding, mind racing. He'd used her name, she hadn't told him her name, which meant he'd gone through her things while she was unconscious. Her purse, probably, her ID. She should be furious, terrified, planning escape, but instead, she found herself thinking about his face when he'd said, I was turned against my will, about the loneliness in those words, about the way he'd sat on the floor instead of towering over her. About the fact that in 300 years, he'd probably learned to lie very well, and she had no way of knowing which parts were truth and which were just another kind of trap. Chapter 4. Threads in the dark. Alina woke to sunlight streaming through the leaded windows. Real sunlight, pale and watery, but sunlight nonetheless. She sat up in the bed she'd finally surrendered to it around 3 in the morning, and blinked at the unfamiliar room. For a moment, she thought maybe it had all been a fever dream, brought on by heartbreak and rain. Then, she saw the tray from last night still on the table, and reality crashed back. She was in a vampire's house, miles from anywhere. Trapped. The door was unlocked. Alina tested it carefully, half expecting some supernatural barrier, but the handle turned smoothly. The hallway beyond was long and dim, lit by more of those self-lighting candles in irons. Portraits lined the walls, stern-faced men and women in period dress, their eyes seeming to follow her as she crept forward. She counted doors, 12 on this floor alone, most of them closed. One stood ajar, revealing a library that made her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, thousands of books, and a ladder on rails for reaching the highest ones. Before she could stop herself, she was inside. The books were old. Some were ancient leather bindings cracked with age, pages yellowed. She ran her fingers along the spines, reading titles in English, French, Latin, languages she didn't recognize, poetry, philosophy, history, and an entire section on what appeared to be vampire lore, the collected knowledge of 6 lifetimes. Alina spun. Adrian stood in the doorway, looking less dangerous in daylight, almost human, except for the pallor of his skin and the shadows under his eyes. He wore a burgundy dressing gown over dark trousers, and his hair was slightly mussed. I didn't mean to. I was just exploring. It's fine. The library is open to you. He moved past her to a particular shelf, pulling down a slim volume. Actually, you might find this useful. A History of the Great Houses, written by a human scholar in 1872. Biased, but factually accurate. He held it out. Alina took it, careful not to let their fingers touch. Why are you being nice to me? I'm not being nice. I'm being practical. He settled into a leather chair near the window, where the sunlight didn't quite reach. You're going to be here for a while. The less frightened you are, the easier this will be for both of us. I'm terrified. I know. Your heartbeat gives you away. He gestured to the other chair. Sit. Ask your questions. Better you understand what you're caught in than stumble blindly. Alina sat, perching on the edge of the seat. The Corvus house. What do they want? Power, territory, the usual. He steepled his fingers. The vampire world is divided into great houses bloodlines that trace back to the original turning. Castellina, Corvus, Nightingale, Thorn, and Ash. We control different territories, maintain different philosophies, and occasionally, we go to war. Over what? This time, a human woman named Sarah Mills. She was under Castellina protection when Corvus House violated the accords and killed her. His jaw tightened. They claimed it was an accident, a young vampire losing control, but Sarah was drained completely. That's not loss of control, that's murder. Elena's stomach turned. And now they're after you. Now I've demanded restitution under the old laws. Blood for blood. A life for a life. They've refused, which means war. He met her eyes. You were seen in my territory, after I fed. They'll assume you're important to me, either as a food source, or something more. But I'm not. They don't know that. He leaned forward slightly. In vampire culture, humans under protection are sacred. To harm one is to challenge the entire house. If Corvus thinks you matter to me, they'll use you as leverage. So I'm bait. Again, you're a complication. His voice softened. One I'm trying to keep alive. Alina looked down at the book in her lap. The woman in the alley. You said she'd forget. Does that always work? The compulsion. On most humans, yes. The mind protects itself by rewriting the memory as a dream or hallucination. But not on me. Not on you. He studied her with unnerving intensity. Tell me, have you ever experienced anything unusual? Prophetic dreams, intuitions that proved accurate, moments where you knew things you shouldn't. Alina thought of her mother, of the morning she'd woken up certain something was wrong, 3 hours before the hospital called, of the way she'd known, somehow, that Marcus was lying even before she'd seen the proof. Sometimes, she admitted, I thought everyone felt that way. They don't. Adrian stood, moving to the window. The sunlight was stronger now, and he kept to the shadows. Psychic sensitivity runs in bloodlines, usually dormant, but occasionally it manifests strongly enough to resist vampire influence. It's rare, valuable. Valuable how? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, some vampires would kill for a human with your abilities. Others would try to turn you, hoping the gift survives the change. Either way, you'd be a target even without the Corvus situation. The book felt heavy in Elena's hands. So I was doomed the moment I walked into that alley. Perhaps you were always meant to see what others couldn't. He turned from the window. Stay in the house. Read, explore the library, do whatever you need to stay sane. But don't go outside, and don't open any sealed doors. Can you do that? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. You could try to run. You'd die, but you could try. The bluntness should have frightened her. Instead, it felt almost like honesty, like he was trusting her with the truth instead of comfortable lies. How long? Alina asked. Until the war resolves. I don't know. Weeks, months, possibly longer. And if Corvus wins, his eyes met hers, and they were very old. Then I'll make sure you're far away before they breach these walls. That's a promise. The promise of a monster. Yes. He moved toward the door, the only kind I can give. After he left, Alina opened the history book and began to read. If she was trapped in this world, She needed to understand it. Even if every page confirmed what she already feared, that the beautiful, lonely vampire keeping her alive might be the most dangerous thing in it. Chapter 5. When shadows knock. 3 days passed in strange, suspended time. Alina fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if she didn't think too hard. Mornings in the library, reading about vampire politics and blood oaths and the intricate web of alliances that kept the houses from tearing each other apart. Afternoons exploring the manor, carefully avoiding sealed doors and the mysterious east wing. Evenings by the fire in her room, pretending she wasn't waiting for Adrian's visits. He came each night after sunset, never staying long, always keeping his distance, but he answered her questions about the books, explained nuances of house law, and once smiled when she made a sardonic comment about vampire fashion sense, that it was easier than it should have been, forgetting what he was, until the fourth night, when everything changed. Alina was reading in the library, curled in what had become her chair, when she heard it, a sound like wind chimes, except the notes were wrong, discordant. They made her teeth ache. She set down her book and moved to the window. The garden below was dark, but she could make out shapes, 3 figures standing at the edge of the property, just beyond the iron gates. They wore dark clothes and stood unnaturally still, like statues, watching the house. Get away from the window. Adrian's voice cut through the silence. Alina turned to find him in the doorway, tension radiating from every line of his body. His eyes had gone completely red. What's happening, Corvus? They're testing the wards. He crossed to her in 3 inhumanly fast strides, pulling her back from the window. His hand on her arm was cold through her sweater. They can't enter without invitation, but they can probe for weaknesses. How many? 3, that I can sense, likely more hidden. He released her, moving to the window himself. They're young scouts. Corvus is getting bolder. The chime sound came again, louder. Alina pressed her hands to her ears, but it didn't help. The noise seemed to vibrate in her bones. What is that? A calling. They're trying to compel any humans inside to come out. His jaw clenched. It won't work on you, but it's going to be unpleasant until they stop. The sound intensified. Elena's vision blurred, and nausea rolled through her stomach. She stumbled, and Adrian caught her, steadying her against him. He was solid. Cold, yes, but solid. Real. Breathe, he said quietly. Focus on my voice. The calling can't hurt you if you don't listen to it. Hard not to listen when it's inside my head. Then push back. You have the strength. Use it. Alina closed her eyes, concentrating. The sound was like hooks trying to pull her forward, toward the window, toward the door, toward the garden and the waiting figures. But underneath it, she could feel something else. A warmth in her chest. A kernel of resistance that was purely her own. She grabbed onto it and pushed. The chime sound stuttered, then stopped. Outside, one of the figures stumbled backward as if struck. Impossible, Adrian breathed. You just reflected their compulsion back at them. I did. A fully trained psychic couldn't do that. He looked at her with something like, oh, what are you? Before Alina could answer, the front door exploded inward with a crash that shook the entire house. Stay here. Adrian was already moving, faster than her eyes could track. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone, Adrian. But he was gone, and she could hear sounds from below, shouting, something breaking, a scream that didn't sound human. Alina ran to the library door, peering into the hallway. She could see the grand staircase from here, and the scene unfolding at its base made her blood freeze. Adrian fought 3 vampires at once. They moved like liquid violence, too fast, too graceful, impossible. But Adrian was faster. He caught one by the throat and threw him into the wall hard enough to crack stone, spun to block a blow from the second. The third came at him from behind, with something that gleamed silver. Behind you. Alina screamed. Adrian ducked, and the blade whistled over his head. He swept the attacker's legs, and the vampire went down hard, but more were coming through the shattered door. 4, 5, too many. Elena's mind raced. She wasn't strong enough to help, wasn't fast enough. But the library. She turned and ran to the shelves she'd noticed earlier, the ones with books on vampire lore. Her fingers flew over the spines until she found what she needed. Protections and wards. A practical guide. She flipped pages frantically. There, a section on thresholds, on invitation. Vampires couldn't enter without invitation. But once invited, they could come freely, unless the invitation was revoked, and it could be revoked by anyone with the authority of the house. Did she have that authority? Adrian had given her free run of the manor, told her to stay, To live here. Did that count? Only one way to find out. Alina ran back to the hallway, gripping the banister as she looked down at the chaos below. Adrian was holding them off, but barely. Blood, his blood, dark and wrong stained his shirt. She took a breath and shouted, with every ounce of will she possessed, I revoke your invitation. By my authority in this house, I command you to leave. The words felt strange in her mouth, too formal, too old, but the attacking vampires froze. One of them, a woman with white blonde hair, looked up at Elena with shock. She can't, she's not bonded. Get out. Elena's voice didn't sound like her own. It resonated, echoing off the stone walls with power she didn't understand. The vampires stumbled backward, not fleeing, being pushed, like an invisible hand was shoving them toward the door. They fought it, hissing and snarling, but one by one they were expelled through the shattered doorway into the night. Silence fell. Adrian stood in the center of the entrance hall, breathing hard despite not needing to breathe, blood staining his clothes and his hands. He looked up at Elena with an expression she couldn't read. How? He said quietly. Did you do that? Elena gripped the banister, her own hands shaking. I read your books. I hoped you shouldn't have been able to command the house. Only a Castellina can do that. Only blood family, or he stopped, stared at her, or a bonded mate. The words hung between them, impossible and terrifying. I'm not your mate, Elena said. No. Adrian's voice was strange, but the house thinks you are. Chapter 6. The Blood Oaths. Truth. Adrian disappeared for 2 hours after the attack. Elena spent that time in her room, heart still racing, mind spinning with impossible words. Bonded mate, the house thinks you are. What did that even mean? She paced, sat, paced again, tried to read but couldn't focus. The adrenaline wouldn't fade, and underneath it churned something else, something that felt dangerously like exhilaration. She'd saved him, used power she didn't understand, but she'd saved him. When Adrian finally knocked on her door, the sky outside was pitch black. Come in, she said, then felt foolish. It was his house. He entered slowly, like approaching a wild animal. He'd changed clothes now, wearing all black, which made his pale skin even more striking. The blood was gone, but she could see faint marks on his throat where claws had raked. You're hurt. I'll heal. We heal quickly. He stopped a careful distance away. We need to talk about what happened. The part where your house thinks I'm your mate? Elena tried for sarcasm, but it came out shaky. But yes, he ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. I need to explain something about vampire bonds. May I sit? Elena nodded. He took the chair by the fire. She sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining space between them. When a vampire takes a mate, Adrian began, it's not like human marriage. It's a blood bond, a connection that ties two souls together across time. The bonded pair can sense each other's emotions, share strength, even communicate mentally if the bond is strong enough. But we're not bonded. You haven't. We haven't. Elena's cheeks heated. No, we haven't exchanged blood, which is required for a true bond. His fingers gripped the chair arms, but bonds can form in other ways. Slowly, through proximity, through trust, through. He stopped, started again. The house wards are keyed to Castellina blood. They recognize family, allies, and bonded mates. For you to command them, the wards must believe you belong to one of those categories. I'm not family. No, and you said I'm not bonded, not fully. His eyes met hers, and they were troubled. But there might be a partial bond, the beginning of one. It would explain your resistance to compulsion, your ability to reflect the calling, and now this. Elena's stomach tightened. How does that happen? A partial bond. Proximity helps. Physical contact, but mostly, he hesitated. It requires both parties to want it, on some level. Conscious or not, the words settled between them like stones. You're saying I want to be bonded to you. Elena's voice came out flat. To a vampire I met 4 days ago. I'm saying your soul recognizes something in mine, and mine in yours. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm 300 years old, Elena. I've felt desire, companionship, even love in my way, but I've never felt a bond beginning to form. Not once. Not until you. Let's convenient timing. Right when you need someone to help defend your house. His head snapped up. You think I engineered this? I don't know what to think. Elena stood, needing movement. You tell me I can't leave, that I'm in danger. that I have these abilities. Now you're saying we're somehow bonding, that my soul wants this. I know how it sounds to you, because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're trying to justify keeping me here with some romantic supernatural destiny nonsense. Adrian stood too, and his control cracked. You think I want this? You think I want to feel your fear like knives under my skin? To lie awake during the day, knowing you're alone and frightened and there's nothing I can do because the sun pins me to my bed like a corpse? His voice rose. I've been alone for 3 centuries, because bonds are rare and dangerous, and I swore I'd never risk another person's life by tying them to mine. But then you walked into that alley, with your autumn eyes and your stubborn courage, and everything I built came crashing down. Alina stared at him. His chest heaved with unnecessary breath, his hands clenched at his sides, and his eyes were almost human in their anguish. I'm sorry, he said more quietly. I shouldn't have said that. You don't need my burdens on top of your own. What happened? Alina asked. You said another death on your conscience. Who died? He turned away, facing the fire. Her name was Catherine, my sister, human, like you. After I was turned, I tried to protect her, to watch over her from a distance, but Eshin Morehouse discovered the connection, used her to get to me. His voice went hollow. They killed her slowly, while I was forced to watch. When 243 years ago, you'd think the pain would fade. He laughed bitterly. It doesn't. Elena moved closer, drawn by something she didn't want to examine. Is that why you saved me? Because I remind you of her? No. He turned to face her. Catherine was gentle, sweet. You're nothing like her. Your sharp edges and fire, and you don't back down, even when you should. You terrify me. I terrify you, because I want to protect you, and I know how that ends. Everyone I've cared for dies. Everyone I've tried to save. His hand lifted, almost touching her face, then fell. So yes, a bond forming terrifies me, because it means I'm already too late to stop caring. Elena's breath caught. She should step back, should put distance between them. Instead, she closed the gap. Maybe, she said softly, I'm tired of being protected. Maybe I want to fight beside someone, instead of being hidden away. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me, all of it. The bond, the dangers, what it means. She lifted her chin. Let me choose with full knowledge instead of half-truths. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand palm up between them. A blood bond requires exchange, but we can test the connection, see how deep it already runs. His voice was careful. If you take my hand, you'll feel what I feel, and I'll feel you. It won't complete the bond, but it will show us the truth. Alina looked at his pale hand, at the veins blue beneath his skin, at the fingers that could crush stone or turn pages with infinite gentleness. She thought of Marcus and his lies, of her mother dying while she was powerless, of a life spent being careful, being small, being safe. She took his hand. Chapter 7. What lives between heartbeats to world tilted. Alina gasped as sensation flooded through her, not her own feelings but his. Adrian's emotions crashed into her like a wave. Loneliness so deep it had its own gravity, guilt that tasted like ash, fear sharp as glass, and underneath it all, a tenderness so unexpected it made her knees weak. He was feeling her too. She could sense his awareness of her presence, bright and warm in his darkness, terrified but defiant, wounded but not broken, and something else a pull toward him that she'd been denying for days. Let go, Adrian said roughly. It's too much, but Alina held tighter, because buried beneath his carefully maintained control, she felt something that changed everything. He was lonely, not just alone, lonely. 300 years of watching the world change while he stayed frozen in time. 300 years of pushing people away before they could be hurt. 300 years of existing without truly living. I see you, she whispered. His eyes widened. Red bled into the edges, not from hunger but from emotion, too strong to contain. Alina. She felt the moment he stopped fighting, felt him open the connection wider, letting her in deeper than anyone had been allowed in centuries. And it was overwhelming, images and memories flooding through her consciousness. Catherine's death, the vampire who'd turned him, holding him down while he screamed. Decades of hunting, of feeding, of trying to hold on to humanity while becoming something other. The weight of eternity pressing down with every passing year. But also, the first time he'd read Shakespeare, the night he'd heard Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, standing on a mountain at dawn, knowing the sun would rise soon and he'd have to retreat underground, but stealing those last few moments of light, small joys collected like precious stones against the darkness, and threaded through it all, the moment he'd seen her in that alley, how her eyes had caught him, first not with fear but with concern for the woman he'd been feeding from, how she'd stood her ground when he'd told her to run, how she'd looked at him like he was still capable of being more than a monster. The connection broke. Alina stumbled backward, gasping. Adrian caught her, steadying her, then immediately released her as if burned. "I'm sorry," he said. "That was too much. I should have warned you. You loved her." Elena's voice came out thick. "Catherine, you loved her so much it still hurts. She was my sister." "No, I mean yes," but Alina pressed her hand to her chest where phantom pain still echoed. "You blame yourself. You think you got her killed because you weren't strong enough to protect her." Adrian's jaw clenched. "I know I did. That's why you won't let yourself care. Why you've been alone all this time." She moved closer despite his instinctive retreat. "You're punishing yourself. I'm keeping people safe by dying slowly inside." Alina shook her head. "Adrian, what happened to Catherine was horrible, but it wasn't your fault. The vampires who killed her, they made that choice, not you. I made the choice to stay in her life, to think I could protect her while being what I am. And if you'd left, she would have lived, not knowing what happened to her brother, thinking you'd abandoned her. Maybe that would have kept her alive, but would it have been better?" Alina held his gaze. "Sometimes the people we love need us more than they need safety." Something cracked in his expression. "You don't understand. I understand grief. My mother died when I was 16. Cancer. It took 9 months. Elena's throat tightened. "My father dealt with it by drinking himself unconscious every night. I dealt with it by becoming so careful, so controlled, that I'd never have to feel that helpless again. I built a life that was small and safe and completely empty. Alina, until 4 days ago, my biggest problem was my lying ex-boyfriend. I was going to move to Edinburgh, start over, build another careful, small, safe life where nothing could hurt me." She laughed bitterly. "Then I walked into an alley and met a vampire. And suddenly, I'm commanding magical houses and feeling other people's emotions and I'm terrified. But you know what? I also feel alive for the first time in years." Adrian stared at her. "You should be running from this, from me. Probably, but I'm tired of running." She took a breath. "When I touched you, I felt the bond. It's real. It's already forming. And I know that scares you. It scares me too. But hiding from it won't make it go away. If we complete the bond, your life becomes mine. You'll feel my hunger, my darkness, age slower, need blood to survive eventually. You'll become something between human and vampire, and there's no going back." His voice was raw. "I won't do that to you. I won't take your humanity, then don't. We don't have to complete the bond." Alina held his gaze. "But we can acknowledge what's already there. Stop pretending we're just captor and prisoner. Be honest about what this is becoming. And what is it becoming? I don't know yet, but I'd like the chance to find out." For a long moment, Adrian didn't move. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were cool against her skin, gentle despite the strength she knew they contained. "You make me want impossible things," he said quietly. "Things I gave up hoping for centuries ago. Like what? Like tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days that follow." His thumb traced her cheek, like someone who sees the monster and stays anyway. Elena's heart hammered. "I'm staying, for now, until Corvus is dealt with, maybe longer." His breath unnecessary, but there. "Alina, if you stay beyond necessity, if you choose this knowing what it means, then I choose it." She covered his hand with hers, keeping it against her face. "I'm not Catherine, I'm not fragile, and I'm not afraid of your darkness. You should be. Well, I'm not." She smiled slightly. "Besides, you felt what I feel. You know I mean it." Adrian's eyes searched hers. Then, decision made, he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers on intimacy that somehow felt deeper than a kiss. "Then, tomorrow," he whispered, "I'll teach you how to defend yourself. If you're staying in my world, you need to survive it." "Tomorrow," Alina agreed. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Somewhere in the darkness, Corvus House was planning their next attack. But in this moment, in this room, 2 broken people had found something neither expected. Someone who understood the weight of existing when the world wanted you to disappear. And that, Alina thought, might be worth fighting for. Chapter 8. Blood and lessons training began at sunset. Adrian led Alina to a room she hadn't discovered in her explorations, a ballroom stripped bare, its chandeliers removed, its mirrors draped in black cloth. Moonlight spilled through tall windows, painting silver squares across the wooden floor. Vampires are faster than you, stronger, they heal from almost anything. Adrian stood in the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back. Your only advantages are intelligence, unpredictability, and your psychic resistance. Alina rolled her shoulders, trying to ease the tension. She'd changed into clothes Adrian had provided, fitted black trousers and a long-sleeved shirt that allowed movement. So basically, I'm doomed. Not if you think like prey that's learned to bite back. He moved closer. First lesson. Vampires expect humans to freeze or flee. Do neither. Attack where it hurts most. Where's that? Eyes, throat, joints. He demonstrated on himself, marking points with clinical precision. We heal, but pain still incapacitates. You need seconds, not minutes. Use them to run, or find a weapon. What kind of weapon? Silver slows healing. Wood through the heart is fatal, but you'd need impossible strength and accuracy. He crossed to the wall, pulling aside a tapestry to reveal an array of weapons. More practically, fire. We're not as flammable as myth suggests, but we avoid it. And this, he handed her a small vial filled with clear liquid, holy water, distilled sunlight, rare, expensive. One drop burns like acid. He pressed it into her palm. Keep it hidden. Use it only as a last resort. Alina pocketed the vial carefully. You're giving me a weapon that could hurt you. Yes. His eyes met hers. That's called trust. Something warm unfurled in her chest. The bond, maybe, or something simpler. All right, what else? Your psychic ability. You reflected a calling yesterday. Let's see if you can do it again. He stepped back, creating distance. I'm going to try to compel you. Not seriously, just enough pressure for you to practice resistance. Ready? Alina braced herself. Ready? Adrian's eyes shifted, red bleeding through. His voice dropped, taking on a resonant quality that vibrated in her bones. Come here. The command pulled at her, hooks in her mind trying to drag her forward. But Alina remembered the feeling from before, that warmth in her chest, that core of resistance. She grabbed it and pushed back. The compulsion shattered. Adrian blinked, surprise flickering across his face. Again, stronger this time. His voice intensified. Kneel. This time, the pressure was crushing. Elena's knees buckled, and she gasped but caught herself. The warmth flared, and she shoved against the compulsion with everything she had. Not only did it break, it rebounded. Adrian staggered, catching himself against the wall. For a moment, he looked dazed. What did you do? I don't know. I just pushed, and it. Alina stared at her hands. Did I hurt you? No. Yes. Not physically. He straightened, running a hand through his hair. You turned my own compulsion back on me, made me want to kneel. That shouldn't be possible from an untrained psychic. Is that bad? It's unprecedented. He approached her slowly, like she was the dangerous one now. Alina, do you understand what this means? You could potentially defend against any vampire's compulsion, maybe even command them if you learned control. Command vampires. The idea seemed absurd. I'm human. You're something more. You must be. He circled her, studying your bloodline. Do you know your family history? Any legends of witches or seers? My grandmother read tea leaves at church fundraisers. Does that count? Perhaps. He stopped in front of her. We need to develop this. If Corvus attacks again, your ability might be the difference between survival and death. They practiced for hours, Adrian teaching her to recognize the feel of compulsion before it took hold, to build mental walls, to strike back when necessary. He was patient but demanding, pushing her until sweat soaked her shirt and her head pounded from the effort. Enough, he finally said, catching her when she swayed. You're exhausted. Any more and you'll damage yourself. I can keep going. No. His voice was firm. Rest is as important as training. Come. He led her from the ballroom to a smaller room she hadn't seen, a conservatory. Glass walls revealing the night garden beyond. A table held bread, cheese, fruit, and wine. You need to eat, Adrian said, pulling out a chair for her. Alina sank into it gratefully. Aren't you going to feed? He settled across from her, pouring wine into her glass. I fed 3 nights ago. I can go a week between feedings, if necessary. Does it hurt? Going without? It's uncomfortable. Like your hunger, but sharper, more insistent. He watched her eat, with an intensity that should have been unsettling. I've never taken enough to kill. That's a choice, not a limitation. The woman in the alley, you said she wouldn't remember. She won't. I took enough to sustain myself, nothing more, and I paid her afterward, money in her pocket. She thinks she earned some other way. His fingers drummed the table. Most vampires are more ethical than humans believe. We have to be. Societies that hunt their food source to extinction don't survive. Alina sipped her wine. Sarah Mills. The woman Corvus killed. Tell me about her. Adrian's expression shuddered. She was a historian, 26. She'd discovered documents about my house's founding, and contacted me for verification. I offered her protection while she worked because the information could be dangerous in wrong hands. His jaw tightened. I thought she was safe. I was wrong. How did they get to her? She left the estate boundaries, just for an hour, to visit her mother. His voice went flat. They were waiting, drained her completely, and left her body where I'd find it. A message. What did the message say? That anyone I protect becomes a target, that my honor is a weakness they'll exploit. He met her eyes, that I should have learned my lesson with Catherine. Alina reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. The touch sent warmth through the bond, her comfort, meeting his pain. I'm sorry, she said, for Sarah, for Catherine, for all the people you've lost. And yet you stay. I told you, I'm not afraid of your darkness. She squeezed his hand. Besides, I'm harder to kill than I look. Adrian's mouth quirked, almost a smile. I'm beginning to believe that, outside, something moved in the garden. They both tensed, but it was only a fox slipping through the hedges. False alarm. This time, they'll come again, Adrian said quietly. Corvus soon let them. Alina straightened, exhaustion falling away. I'll be ready. Chapter 9. The night everything burns day came at midnight. Alina woke to the sound of shattering glass, and Adrian's voice in her mind, not spoken but felt through the bond. Stay in your room. Lock the door. She was on her feet before fully conscious, heart hammering. The vial of distilled sunlight was already in her hand, grabbed from the nightstand where she'd kept it since training. More crashes, shouts, a roar that didn't sound human. Alina ran to the door and locked it, then stood there, hands shaking, while the house shook with violence below. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to crawl under the bed and pray they didn't find her. But Adrian was down there, alone, fighting, God knew how many. I'm not Catherine, she thought. I don't hide while people die for me. She unlocked the door. The hallway was chaos. Smoke billowed from somewhere below, acrid and wrong. Two vampires fought on the landing, one she didn't recognize in Corvus Black. The other, a male vampire she'd glimpsed once in the kitchen. Household guard, maybe. He was losing. The Corvus vampire had him pinned, fangs bared for the killing strike. Hey, Alina shouted. Both vampires' heads snapped toward her. The Corvus one smiled, slow and cruel. The human pet, how convenient. He released the guard and started toward her with inhuman speed. Elena's training kicked in. She didn't freeze, didn't run. She waited until he was close to close and threw the vial of distilled sunlight directly into his face. The scream was inhuman. The vampire clawed at his eyes as his skin bubbled and burned, smoke rising from the wounds. He stumbled backward, hit the banister, and toppled over. The sickening crack of his body hitting the floor below echoed through the house. The guard vampire stared at her. Where's Adrian? Entrance hall. Miss, you should, but Alina was already running. She took the stairs 2 at a time, choking on smoke. The entrance hall was worse than she'd imagined. 5 Corvus vampires had breached the wards. How? She didn't know, and Adrian fought them all. He moved like water, like violence given form, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. Blood stained the marble floor. His blood. One of the Corvus vampires, the white blonde woman from before, had gotten behind him. She held something silver that gleamed in the firelight. A blade. Alina didn't think, just acted. She reached for that warmth in her chest, that power that had reflected compulsion, and screamed with everything she had, stop. The word wasn't just sound, it was command, heavy with psychic weight. And it rippled through the air like a shockwave. Every vampire in the hall froze, all of them, including Adrian. Alina stood at the base of the stairs, breathing hard, and felt the power coursing through her. She could feel their minds pressing against her. 6 vampire wills, ancient and strong, trying to break free of her hold. She held tighter. You will leave this house, she said, voice shaking but firm. You will not return. You will tell your house that Alina Castellina commands it. The blonde vampire's eyes widened. Castellina, you're not. I am now. Alina felt the words settled into truth as she spoke them. The bond between her and Adrian flared, and suddenly she understood. By commanding the house, by choosing to stay, by taking his hand and accepting the connection, she'd already begun the transformation. Not fully vampire, but not entirely human anymore either. The household wards recognized her as Adrian's mate, his equal, his partner. And so could the Corvus vampires. Go, Alina commanded, before I make you. She didn't know if she could, but they didn't know that either. One by one, the Corvus vampires stumbled toward the broken door. The compulsion released as they crossed the threshold. And they ran, disappearing into the night like shadows fleeing dawn. The blonde was last. She paused at the doorway, looking back at Alina with something between respect and fear. Corvus will hear of this. A human commanding vampires. They'll come for you specifically now. Let them. The vampire smiled coldly. You have no idea what you've started. Then she was gone. The moment they were clear, Elena's legs gave out. She hit the floor hard, gasping, the power draining from her like water through a sieve. Strong arms caught her. Adrian, kneeling beside her, his face streaked with blood and ash. What did you do? What in God's name did you do? Saved you. I think. Elena's head spun. Did it work? You commanded 6 vampires at once, forced them to retreat. His hands cupped her face, and his eyes were wild. Elena, that's impossible. That's, I know, unprecedented. She tried to smile. I'm full of surprises. You called yourself Castellina. His voice dropped to a whisper. You claimed house name. The wards already think I'm yours. The bond is forming whether we complete it or not. Elena met his gaze. I'm tired of pretending otherwise. If I'm going to fight in your world, I need the authority to do it. So I claimed it. Do you understand what that means? You've just declared yourself my mate to every vampire house. There's no taking it back. You're a target now. Forever. I was already a target. She touched his face, tracing the line of blood on his cheek. At least now, I'm a target who can fight back. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, he did something she'd never seen him do. He laughed. Real laughter. Rough and disbelieving and utterly genuine. You magnificent, terrifying woman. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. You're going to give me a second heart attack, and I don't even have a working heart. Good thing you're already dead, Alina. His voice turned serious. What you did tonight, using that much psychic power, there will be consequences. Your body isn't built for it. You'll need blood. The word came from somewhere deep in her knowing. I'll need blood to sustain the power. That's what you were going to say. His silence was confirmation enough. Alina pulled back to look at him. His beautiful, terrible, lonely face. The face of a man who'd spent 3 centuries pushing people away to keep them safe. Then, I'll need blood, she said simply. We'll figure it out. Together. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, but I'm staying anyway. She smiled. Besides, you felt what I feel. Remember, you know I mean it. Adrian's thumb traced her lower lip. The bond will complete itself now. Gradually, you'll change. Age slower. Need less food and more blood. Develop abilities you can't imagine. And you'll be tied to me until one of us dies. I know. There's no going back. I know. Alina, she kissed him. Chapter 10. Dawn breaks different. The kiss was gentle, careful. Like Adrian was afraid she'd shatter. Alina pulled back first. Breathless. I'm not made of glass. No, he agreed, voice rough. You're made of fire and stubbornness and impossible courage. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I am entirely out of my depth. That makes 2 of us. They stayed on the floor amid the wreckage, broken furniture, shattered windows, blood drying on marble. Dawn was hours away, but Alina could feel exhaustion pulling at her bones. The psychic exertion had cost more than she'd realized. You need rest, Adrian said, standing and pulling her up with him. And I need to repair the wards before Corvus sends reinforcements. They won't come back tonight. They're regrouping. Alina swayed, and his arm steadied her. I could feel their fear. I scared them. You scared me. His expression was unreadable. What you did commanding that many vampires, it should have killed you. The psychic backlash alone, but it didn't. The bond protected me, didn't it? Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes, I felt you pulling strength through our connection, using me as an anchor. He turned away. That's what a completed bond does, makes us stronger together than apart. But, Alina, if I had died tonight while you were channeling through me, I would have died too. I know. She touched his shoulder, felt him tense. That's what partnership means. We protect each other or we fall together. That's what terrifies me. Alina moved around to face him. 300 years, Adrian, you've been alone for 300 years because you're afraid of this, of connecting, of being vulnerable. But you already are vulnerable. Tonight proved that you can't fight every battle alone. I've managed so far. Have you, or have you just survived? She cupped his face, making him look at her. There's a difference between existing and living. I spent years just existing after my mother died. Small life, safe life, empty life. Then I met you, and for the first time in a decade, I felt something, terror, yes, but also excitement, purpose, like maybe I was meant for more than hiding from pain. You were meant for so much more than this. His hands covered hers. You could have had a normal life. Husband, children, growing old, surrounded by people you love, with Marcus, the man who gave my grandmother's ring to someone else. Alina laughed bitterly. That life was never real. I was playing a role, trying to be what everyone expected. Maybe this is who I actually am. Someone who walks into dark alleys, who doesn't run when monsters show their teeth, who chooses impossible things because they feel right. Adrian's eyes searched hers. You're choosing me. Knowing what I am, what you'll become, I'm choosing us. There's a difference. He pulled her close, then, wrapping his arms around her like she was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. Alina felt the bond pulse between them stronger now, more defined. She could sense his emotions clearly, fear and hope and something that felt dangerously like love. I don't know how to do this, he whispered against her hair. How to be with someone, how to share my darkness without drowning them in it. We'll figure it out, one day at a time. Alina pulled back enough to see his face. But Adrian, you have to let me in, all the way. No more protecting me from yourself. What if I hurt you? What if you don't? She smiled. What if we're actually good for each other? What if 300 years of loneliness ends because you finally let yourself have this? He kissed her then, deeper than before. Not careful anymore but desperate, like a drowning man finding air. Alina kissed him back, tasting copper and smoke and something indefinable that was purely him. The bond flared between them, and she felt the moment it locked into place. Complete, irrevocable, hers. When they broke apart, Adrian's eyes were red-rimmed but clear. It's done. You're bound to me now. To House Castellan, to everything that means good. Alina swayed, and this time she couldn't catch herself. Adrian scooped her up effortlessly. I can walk. Humor me. He carried her up the stairs, past the scorch marks and blood, to her room, set her carefully on the bed, and moved to leave. Stay, Alina said. Please, I should repair the wards. They can wait until tomorrow, today, whatever. She patted the bed beside her. I just commanded 6 vampires and completed a mystical blood bond. I'm not sleeping alone. Adrian hesitated. Then, slowly, he settled on top of the covers beside her. Careful, controlled. Alina turned on her side, studying his profile in the candlelight. This is going to be interesting. That's one word for it. What happens now, with Corvus? Now they know you're my bonded mate. That changes the politics. His hand found hers. They'll either back down to avoid a wider war, or they'll come with everything they have. Either way, we have time to prepare, and if they come, then we fight, together. He turned his head to look at her. You've made yourself part of this war. I can't undo that. I don't want you to, Alina. I mean it. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She squeezed his hand, terrified, covered in ash, bonded to a vampire who's terrible at accepting affection, but right where I belong. I'm not terrible at accepting affection. You're literally lying on top of the covers instead of under them. I don't want to presume. Alina pulled him closer, and after a moment's resistance, he surrendered. Let himself be held. Let himself be human. Just for a moment. There, Alina murmured, exhaustion finally winning. Was that so hard? Impossibly hard. But his arms tightened around her, and somehow exactly right. Outside, the sky began to lighten. Dawn approached, that dangerous time when vampires retreated and humans woke to face the day. But in this room, in this moment, they were neither human nor vampire but something new, something neither had dared hope for. Partners, equals, bonded. Alina, Adrian whispered, thinking she was asleep. Thank you for choosing this, for choosing me. She smiled against his shoulder. Thank you for being worth choosing. They lay together as dawn broke over Blackwood Estate. 2 broken souls who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to face the light. Together. The war with Corvus House wasn't over. The danger hadn't passed, and the world would never be simple again. But Alina Castellana, human, psychic, bonded mate to the most powerful vampire in Britain wasn't afraid. She had finally stopped running. And sometimes, that's where the real story begins.